Choose. Here we go. All right, guys. Welcome back to Construction Executives Live. I am your host, Jeremy Owens. I'm calling all the way from sunny California, Northern California. We have two great guests for us today, and I'm really excited to get this thing going. Really, our goal here at US Construction Zone is to connect executives in all aspects of the construction industry. We want to allow for that collaboration, mentorship, and education. And this is what Construction Executives Live is all about. We're trying to have those tough conversations, maybe conversation we've never had before, maybe topic we've never had before. We want USCZ to be that safe place to have those conversations. So we're really excited about today's topic, which is how to solve construction's branding problem. We are going to learn from two dynamic speakers and discuss strategies on how we can transform branding, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the industry. And if you're not familiar with AirMeet, if this is your first time using it, there's a little chat function on the right side there. You can chat as we get going. There's a question box there. If you have a question for any of the speakers, that's where you would ask the question. And Matt will be interacting with you guys as we go. So on to our first speaker. Jennifer Todd is a 15-year industry veteran and president of LMS General Contractors. LMS performs demolition, remediation, and environmental services across California and the Southeast. Jennifer was the youngest Black woman to acquire California's CSLB General Engineering A license. She is also the only person in engineering news record history to be recognized as ENR Top 25 Newsmaker and Top 20 Under 40 recipient in the same year. Wow, say that 10 times fast, right? She was also a 2020 Construction Business Owner Magazine Outstanding Woman in Construction finalist and the November 2020 cover feature. Jennifer is also the founder of A Greener Tomorrow, a 501c3 nonprofit with a mission to bring skilled trades awareness and opportunities to underrepresented groups of minorities and women. She's a graduate of Arizona State University, Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law, and resides in South Florida. Please help me welcome Jennifer Todd. Jennifer, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that nice intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. I tell everybody this whenever I'm on a podcast or anything. I want that on a loop in my house so that my kids and my family can hear me, can hear that intro about yourself, right?
No one cares. No one at home cares.
Totally. Well, let's start with how you got started in construction, and I'm really curious about. You talked about a manager that you had when you first got started in construction.
Yeah, absolutely. I really started in the industry by accident. I ran into a friend and I needed a job after college. I thought that I was going to be a psychologist. It didn't really work out, thankfully. And I really started from the bottom, per se, and as a receptionist. I didn't have any experience in construction. I didn't know much, but I had a manager that was very encouraging, very supportive, and really saw the light within me and gave me an opportunity to grow within the industry.
Awesome. Awesome. You always need those beginning people. I mean, probably without them, you wouldn't be in construction, right? So it's like you need that first mentor to kind of push you along a little bit if you have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, honestly, there's no secret that the imagery and the brand of a typical construction worker has been a white male for generations now. Why is imagery so important?
Yeah, that's often what we've seen. And when I entered the industry 15 years ago, that's what I saw. And that's the only thing that I knew. I didn't even know that there were an abundance of minority owned business owners. I didn't even know that, let alone to see any women or women of color in a space of leadership when it came to the construction industry. So, to answer your question, why imagery is so important is that you have to see it to be it. And even though we live in a new world of social media with imagery everywhere, there is still the fact that we have to see so many men doing the work. And so we need to see it. Every day I get messages from women across the country and sometimes across the world who say, hey, I saw you, I found you. Now I know that I can do it. And so I shouldn't be one of the few people that they see. It should just be common, you know.
Yeah, yeah, you only wish, but there's got to be a starting point, and that's what's cool about you and Dr. G is like you guys are that inspiration. And there's that article that you wrote in 2020, and I'm gonna have Matt post it for everybody, and it was titled "Peer Silence Speaks Loud," and I found it both heartbreaking and inspiring at the same time. It was heartbreaking because for me, it was like, wow, we have a long ways to go. But it was inspiring because we had people like you and Dr. G that can start the conversation, can point out biases that exist, can start a conversation that we've never had before as an entire industry. And your quote that said, quote, construction industry leaders have talked about the importance of diversity and inclusion. Now is the time to show it. Change begins where comfort level ends, end quote. How do we get more movement and less lip service?
Well, one, we stopped the lip service, stop talking about it. I wrote that right after George Floyd, and it was really just out of frustration, not seeing having been in this industry for this long, I am technically a millennial. And so I shouldn't be the first at anything at this point. The
Right.
groundwork should have already been laid. And, we need to see more action. And how can we see action? The first thing that you can do as a leader or business owner is really lean into your employees. They will know the workplace culture. They know what's going on within the company. So they know what they need and what we need to see from you as a business owner and leader. The second thing that we can do is look at other companies that for inspiration, see what they're doing, see what their takeaways are, and how you can implement that within your company. And the third thing that you can do if you really want to dive in is hire help. Outsource the information, find a DEI coordinator, find a consultant company who can tell you where your company is lacking, and therefore you can really begin to implement change within your company because we've seen the great resignation. Uh,
Right.
Happy employees, they don't leave your job, they don't leave the company, and we've seen a lot of switching around. If you're on LinkedIn, we've seen a lot of transition going on, so that's a sign of unhappiness in the workplace culture. So
Yeah. And then you talked about it at LMS, like you can't hire everybody, right? But you're the one that's getting the phone calls and saying, first of all, can I come work for you? And unfortunately, that's not the way it works, right? I mean, we'd love to hire everybody, but they're coming to you and saying, "Hey, what are you doing at LMS?" So I'm curious, how are you doing in it? And part of it is the imagery. Part of it is you have people on the job sites, you have leadership of color. So you're already leading the way. But how do you go about having those conversations? Because, like I said, you can't hire everybody.
no, you can't hire everyone, and I know that there is a labor shortage across the industry.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of it has to do with the optics. If you're going to a website and you say you tout diversity and inclusion, but everyone on your website is a white male, uh, you're not going to attract a lot of diversity and inclusion. If you are saying that you believe in equality and there are no women and there are no people of color in the C-suite position or president or vice president, then you're not, no one's going to believe that.
Right.
Before we used to do the hiring. Today, employees are doing just as much hiring as we are. They want to work for a company that represents them as well personally as well as professionally. And so they need to see it. They want to go to your social media. They want to go to your LinkedIn page and website and see someone who's reflective of themselves to know that they have an opportunity, not look at your page and say, hey, doesn't look like I'm going to get promoted there. Doesn't look like I have a chance there. They
Right.
don't work with this type of person. So I probably am not going to even reach out and even apply to work at this company.
Right, and you mentioned that in our call that social media is big for this younger generation because I mean, just like employers go to social media to check out an employee, a potential employee, the same thing goes for if you want to work there,
Yeah.
right? There you can go there and take a look and see the imagery and see what they're all about. And like we said, not just lip service, actually visually see what's going on social media's changed that. I mean, we didn't have that growing up, so we didn't have that opportunity. But I guess that's a great thing for the youth is that now you can kind of go take a look at a company before you invest in them.
And even for the current people that are within the market, when you think about the people that you follow on LinkedIn, I follow various construction companies, and they showcase who's have been hired or promotions. And if you kind of see a trend that there is just only males being promoted or only a certain race being promoted, then it's like, yeah, well, okay, that's what's going on over there. So
Right. Totally. Yeah, and I'm curious about this too. I mean, as the youngest, I mean, you talk about a lot of firsts. You have a lot of firsts, but the youngest Black woman to receive the California CSLB engineering license, followed up by your law degree. It's safe to say that leaving a lasting legacy is important to you. So, where did that drive come from? And I guess what are your long term goals in this industry?
yeah, it definitely was not intentional. I didn't set out to be the first of anything. It just was a matter of one, when you have no parachute, you have to do what you have to do.
Right.
Secondly, as a double minority, being a Black woman, I understand that my competency is often going to be questioned in this construction industry. And so for me, I set out to make sure that there was no one that could question my capabilities of being able to do the work.
Mhm.
When a man owns a construction company, no one's asking him who's doing the accounting, if he's
Mhm.
doing this progress payments or anything like that. But if you're a woman and you say you're doing demolition, they're wanting to know how in the world are you making that happen? Like, how does that work? Do you know what you're doing? so for me, going to law school, I understand as a smaller company, it was very litigious. I saw the hundreds of thousands of dollars that you would spend or lose by not having being able to afford in-house counsel. Uh,
Right.
how as a smaller company, you're often starved out if you are not big enough to be able to float the job the way that you need to and get things done. And so I just wanted to make sure that no one could take away my education and my experience, and I wanted that to be known.
Wow, that's a great answer. Great answer. The other thing I wanted to find out about is the your Green Tomorrow. It's a 501(c) nonprofit. So when did you get started with that, and what are the goals, and kind of how can we help as an industry get behind that?
Yeah, great question. So, Agreement Tomorrow really started much like things, just the supply and demand.
Mm.
We do a lot of public works projects, we do a lot of housing authority projects. And so, what we saw from that was the representation aspect.
Right.
Many of the residents had never seen a Black company performing the work. They'd never seen a demolition and abatement contractor. And so they just began to come to the gate asking, how can I get a job? Because you look like me. So obviously I have a chance to work. And what we also found was that a lot of the Section 3 residents who reside in the housing authority projects are women. And so, presumably, women cannot do construction. And so, what we found was that they came to be our best trainees. We were able to train them at OSHA, CPR, and get them asbestos abatement certifications. And some of them were actually doing demolition. And they show up to work because they have responsibilities. They've got children and they have bills. And so, they are some of our best workers. But now we've actually expanded the program to include youth. And so we go to different schools within the inner cities and we reach out to girls. And so women, minorities, that's really our target market to get the next generation to work, because it's no secret that the construction industry is suffering and has a sheer lack of talent. And we need to fill these hundreds of thousands of positions that there are. And we can't do it at the current state and the current rate that we're doing it right now.
Oh, totally. And when you were growing up, I mean, I know from myself, I never got introduced to construction. Besides my family business, I never got introduced to construction when I was a youth. Did you?
The sad thing was that my grandfather and my father, my father actually worked for my grandfather. He had a construction company.
Okay.
However, they never spoke to me about it. And it wasn't until I was on the cover of Construction Business Owner magazine that my father said, well, maybe you got the construction gene after all. We don't know. And I was just like, but you guys never spoke to me about this. And then my grandmother said, you're really taking this thing serious. And so it was after that 10 years. And then they said, oh, well, she's really serious about this. But we've got to change that. We have to make sure, it shouldn't be 10 years into construction. It should be at the age of 10 that
Right.
we're exposing girls and we're exposing youth to the opportunities of being an engineer. I didn't know that that option existed, and being able to operate heavy equipment or being into the trades.
Mhm.
Um, I can't say that I was a part of a family business because I never received the benefit of knowing about it and being ushered into it. And so I consider myself a first generation construction business owner because my grandfather didn't have 10 employees. He wasn't working across the country, and I didn't have a husband that just handed me the job or anything like that. So this is really like from the start of things. And so if we can start to introduce talent very early on before high school, get them at middle school and introduce them to the trades, then we're definitely going to be able to kind of begin to make change and see change. And I'd like to say that we can see the change make it reflective of what this country looks like, of every shade, of
Right.
every gender, and go from there.
Right. It's funny because back to the imagery thing, we always think of construction, hard hat, doing work, but there's hundreds of thousands of jobs that have nothing to do with boots on the ground, right?
Yeah.
So we haven't done a good job of talking about all those other industry, all those other parts of the industry, like engineering, architecture. There's all these things that you need that you don't have to swing a hammer. So people think, "Oh, I'm not very handy." Well, that's just a very small percentage of what we need. And in order to round out our problem, we need all of those aspects covered. So, talking about those parts of the trades, as opposed to when people think of trades, they think, oh, you're a carpenter, or, you're actually actively doing the work.
And that's a good point that you brought up. People always associate construction with just physical manual labor.
Mm,
One thing that I love about the construction industry is the diversity within the industry. If there's anything that you can think of that can be applicable to the construction industry, whether you're a photographer, whether you're in software, whether you're in engineering, whether you're doing any social media, there's so many fields within the industry that you can feel it's not just about simply being within the field. Yes, those jobs are needed, but there's so many things that you can do. And one other thing I'll share with you when it comes to imagery, just last week, I made a post on Instagram, just a comment, and they were talking about jobs that don't require college and how you can be successful. And this was actually on a gossip blog. This was just like one comment. I said, hey, we need people in construction. And from that, I received 40 messages from Black women asking, how can I get into the construction industry? Just
wow.
one comment, just one line, nothing fancy. And so, just from that one comment, 40 people have reached out to me, and I've compiled a list and said, hey, here, this is how you can get started. These are different programs, apprenticeships that you can start. But that's the importance of representation and imagery. They would
Mhm.
have never asked that question had it been someone who maybe didn't look like them. But because they saw someone who looked like them and said, hey, look, no. And they said, even one person said, oh, I wish I was a man. And I said, no, there are opportunities for women within this industry as well. And
Yeah.
so some of them were interested in the administrative aspects or different types of areas, and some of them are interested in the field. But that's how simple outreach effort can be. It doesn't have to be anything, just this robust system that's so fancy. It's just that simple. All you have to do is share the information with people, and they will come. And that's part of what I'm going to be doing actually on the 16th as well. I'm having a master class for women in construction. So if anyone is interested, go to my LinkedIn and you'll find the information, because it's really just about providing the information, sharing the access, giving people an opportunity to make a decision.
Awesome. Yeah. When is that going to be?
It's actually going to be on June 16th. So I'm
Awesome.
going to be sharing it this week on Instagram and also on LinkedIn. So if you are in the architecture, engineering, construction, come join my It's Him, Not You, Not You masterclass. And I'll be happy to share my experience and help you navigate in a male dominated industry.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I'll try to tune in for sure. The other thing we talked about, a lot of firsts that, a lot of awards that have come in your way, and like you said, with your parents going, "Wow, she's really serious in this. Look at these awards she's getting." Which one are you most proud of, and why?
Oh, of course, I'm proud of the Construction Business Owner magazine being an outstanding woman in construction finalist, because I was actually the first Black business owner ever featured on the magazine in their history. So that's monumental. But I think the Engineering News Record Top 25 Newsmaker Award is really special to me because it's something that you can't be nominated for. So one, it speaks to the fact that there's so many prestigious people over the years that have won this award. You can't pay any money, you can't be nominated. So it just means that people are talking. And so it means that whatever I'm saying and sharing on my platform made an impact. And so for me, it's big because how often are you rewarded for being yourself? We carry so much in the workplace, especially if you're a woman in the industry. You deal with so many implicit bias, microaggressions, imposter syndrome. And so to be able to come to work every day and say the things that I want to say and be rewarded for it, even though I get some hate mail, is great because it means that I'm doing something right. And it really speaks to what it's really about. When I joined the construction industry, I thought that I wanted to just be rich and just like, on a private plane and make a lot of money and do all of that. And then I, had a great, great awakening. It didn't happen like that. So, but now I understand I'm not here to do the work. I'm here to show that the work can be done. And really, I am just a vessel at this point to show people and show others that this is possible and that you can achieve a successful life and really build a life and a business being yourself and within this industry.
Yeah, awesome. Do you still struggle with imposter syndrome?
Very rarely.
Yeah.
Yeah. My head can fit through the door. It's not that my ego is so big, but at this point, I have conditioned to think I have already manifested it. So generally, when things happen, I am not surprised. I was like, saw this coming, just was waiting for it to happen. It took a couple of years, but hey, I knew it was going to happen.
Right.
In the work, it's rare that you are surprised about the things that happen. And I believe that any room that I enter, I am supposed to be there. That's where I'm supposed to be, whatever the message is that I am supposed to, whoever that person is that I'm supposed to touch or access or reach, I'm supposed to be there for whatever reason.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I think you're supposed to be here right now. So thank you for being here. Last question for you. What are some positive signs you were seeing in diversity, equity, inclusion, and imagery in construction? And how will promoting and adopting DEI transform the construction industry?
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing more women within the industry that are being showcased and focused on. I'm seeing more women being promoted for the work that they are doing, so that's good. I'm hearing that there is less, you know, sexual harassment on the jobs and things like that.
Oh,
So
guys.
that's always, yeah, that's always a great thing. But I think the thing that we can really do to promote the DEI aspect is for business owners and leaders, especially these large contractors, is get the hell out of the way. Let the DEI people do their job. If you hired them to diversify the company, hire subcontractors that are diverse and small and diverse contractors, let them do their job. That's what they're hired to do. So unleash them and let them do their job, because at the end of the day, it's going to benefit your company. It's going to benefit the bottom line if you're really about what you say you're about.
Right.
Lead with the action, and so that's the best way to promote it. And also talk to your social media people. I mean, you can't just highlight women during 1 month and then they all disappear. So it's like, okay, what happened? Where'd they go? March is over, so now what? We're packing them back up. So you have to be consistent, as with anything that you do in your business. You have to consistently do safety meetings. You have to consistently check inventory. So you have to do HR requirements. So DEI should be no different. You should just add it into your business component as just, this is what we're doing. This needs to be done. And also to realize that this is now becoming the norm. A lot of projects, whether they're public or private, are having that requirement where they want to see diverse contractors. They want you to meet that requirement. They want you within hiring people who reside in the areas in which you're making change and building. So just get used to it, because this is what's happening. So get on board and just do it. Really, just do it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Jennifer. So lmsgc.com is your business website. And do people contact you on your LinkedIn? Are you pretty active there?
All the time.
Okay. So go to LinkedIn, follow her, follow what she's doing. Obviously, you're speaking all over the nation. We appreciate you spending a little time with us at U.S. Construction Zone. Thank you for all that you're doing for the industry. Keep going.
Thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for having me on today. I appreciate it, Jeremy.
Thank you so much. About the connection, and that we will definitely get her on to a podcast here shortly. So, and if she happens to pop back up, let us know. Just bring her back onto stage, Matt. So, Jennifer, welcome back. So, it's live TV, right? You're still muted, Jennifer. See, live TV. You're still muted, Jennifer.
All
There
right,
you go.
so
Live TV, right?
I was saying that we have to be flexible, and so I really want to hear more about your thoughts when you were just saying that you come from a multi-generational
Yeah.
family business, and
Mhm.
diversity wasn't something that was considered.
Yeah, I mean, oh yeah, honestly, I mean, my dad and grandfather all grew up. We're all been in remodeling for, like I said, my grandpa started in 1956, so that's when my roots start. Now, in 1956, the industry was way different. My grandpa, there's nothing familiar about the industry than it is today. There was absolutely zero women, if it, maybe a secretary. Very few minorities. The only minorities that we started to see in the 80s, 90s was Eastern European and Mexican labor that would come up, and that was it. It was just the labor force. That was our knowledge of it. So yeah, I mean, I guess my point was, I like that we're having the conversation. That's what this is supposed to be. Is we didn't have the conversation, and that was the entire industry's fault, and partly our fault as well. And now we're having the conversation, and we need to have it before we can solve it. But like you said, are you done talking about it, or like I said, talking about it kind of highlights it, right?
It does, but the thing about it is, I think that because when you have to talk about it, then that means that you have to acknowledge the past consideration of why there is no diversity, and then that takes you down the line of inequality and racism. And so people don't want to talk about that because it's an uncomfortable topic. And
Hmm.
so we all know history at this point, and we know how the things began. And so we know that they're Black descendants, that they built all of these historic monuments within, DC and the
Right.
White House, and the railroad system and everything like that. So we know that Black people are competent of building things because we still have the infrastructure to show that.
Right.
What's happened throughout the years of segregation, and here we are, is that they have kind of been left behind. And so now that we can acknowledge that, and it's uncomfortable and it's okay, now
Yeah.
we know that, let's move forward and say, what can we do to remedy the situation? Because now it's not just a diversity topic, it's something that actually impacts every single trade across the country.
Right.
Every single trade is suffering from the lack of talent because they chose not to be inclusive for decades. And so now this is the result of the lack of diversity.
Right.
Diversity and inclusion, it feels good to talk about it. Yeah, okay, let's do it. We want to do it. At this point, we don't have a choice not to do it
Right.
because we have an infrastructure bill that's been approved. And so who's going to do the work? You know,
Right.
we have COVID, so you can't have an influx of immigrant workers come and do the work, nor do
Right.
you need to, because you have a slew of people who are prepared to do the work, but you have to get the outreach going. You have to go out to the HBCUs. You have to go out to the inner cities and the smaller town communities, the Fresnos and places like that, to get the talent. And you have to show people that there are other people who look like them who are capable of doing the work. Because this is, I mean, let's be for real here. Construction is not rocket science. We're not talking about working at NASA. You can teach anybody who is willing to learn how to do the work.
Right.
It's not often that I fire people, because construction is a trade where you go and start doing the work and you start popping floor tile and things like that. You will quit if you don't want to do it. So you don't have to. It's not
Yeah.
hard for
Yeah.
people can make the decision if they want to do the work, if they want to work in the field or labor, whatever the case is. And so we just have to start and get over the, out of our comfort zone of feeling uncomfortable. So what? We're all feel uncomfortable at work sometimes, but the greater good is that, hey, look, do you want to be out of business in 5 years because you can't find labor? Do you want to
Right.
be stalled on the contracts? Do you want to continue to wait for the prices and to rise for all of the supplies and inventory and be stuck in another recession? So
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, that I just read it was 750,000. I think the AGC was saying 750,000 open jobs now, but
mhm.
that is before the infrastructure bill really takes hold. So I am scratching my head trying to figure out how we're going to make this happen. Because you can't take from another industry. It's not like you're pulling. Everyone has a shortage.
Yeah.
So there's a work shortage in the U.S. There's a want to work hard shortage in the U.S. And I think that starts from a childhood. That starts from a parenting issue that we really need to get back to having conversations about work ethic and wanting to get your hands dirty, whether that's in construction or whether that's washing dishes. We
Yeah.
got to get back to working.
But also too, we have to get to paying people. And so we can't say that we want people to work, but we don't want to pay them. If you're talking about that you've been paying the going rate is $15 an hour or $22 an hour for the last 10 years, the math is not mathing because right now in California, you're there, it's 7.50 a gallon. So if the
Crazy.
minimum wage rate is almost equivalent to the gas rate for a gallon of gas, how are we expecting people to get to work? And so we have to figure out a way that we can continue to create living wage careers within this industry and
Mhm.
really recruit these people to get into this industry because we are going to be in trouble and we already are in trouble. I mean, at the beginning of the year, AJC, it was like 463,000 jobs. Here
Yeah,
it's June and we're at 750,000. And so
yeah.
come December, where are we going to be with the numbers?
Yeah, it's a good point. And I had another question for you. So Matt did put the article that Dr. G wanted to share. It's a good one. It's 10 things you can do to promote inclusion and diversity list. And it's an infographic. You guys can take that infographic, share it with your staff. But there's one on there, a couple on there that I wanted to talk to you about. Number 4 on there was demonstrate to employees that they are valued. And I was thinking about this in construction. We've been such a rough management style, don't want to compliment because then they're not going to work as hard or all these crazy things. But you, they've been undervalued for generations as well. So how can we get back to valuing our employees, and why is that important?
Well, that's very critical, especially if you're talking about retaining your work crews and good talent. Good talent is, I don't care what industry you're in, it's hard to find good, reliable talent. And so, one of the ways to showcase and demonstrate that your employees are valuable is listening to them,
Mhm.
listening to their needs, asking them, having individual meetings with employees to see what it is they want to do. Because sometimes we start a job, but then our interest lies elsewhere. Me in particular, I started off as a receptionist. And once I started doing that, I became interested in the project management aspect. And once
Right.
I became interested in that, it became an estimator. So finding out what are your goals, what individual professional goals, and how can I support them? Do you want to get a certification, or do you want a promotion, or do you want more flexibility? Are you in the office and you want to be in the field? I hear that a lot, especially when it comes to women. A lot of women want to work in the field but are discouraged from doing so by their employers, and so it becomes a frustrating issue. So
Yeah.
finding out what they want to do professionally, individually, but also catering to the collective.
Yeah.
A lot of the events sometimes are just not friendly for everyone. Not everyone is into golfing and ski shooting. And so maybe you can ask the employees, what are some other things that we can do to make you and your family feel included when we do employee things and have parties and things like that.
Yeah. No, and yeah, that's a good point. And the other one on that list that I really want to talk about, because it's huge for me personally in my life too. It number 8 on the list was lead with empathy, because it's one of my favorite words. I don't think DEI is going to work without it, right? Without being authentic, without having empathy, because you can't have those conversations with your employees, and especially in terms of diversity, if you don't have empathy first. Otherwise, it's just canned. not authentic. You probably look silly, and you probably just look like you're checking a box.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the climate that we're in today, when the shooting happened in New York, I said, hey, look, if you guys don't want to come to work, fine. Because everyone was just an emotional wreck. And then we turn around and we have the shooting in Texas. And so it hits communities so hard. But if you don't have that empathy to showcase, no, I'm not Mexican, but hey, I have children, I have nieces, I have nephews, and I can understand it's a person. I have
Right.
grandparents, and so uh, everyone's not going to be able to just put on a brave face and come to work. And so you have to be considerate of the things that people go on have going on outside of work and
Right.
how that affects them. You know, whether it's a pregnancy or a death or divorce, or there's so many things that we deal with on the outside of work, and we just have to come into work and just put on the face and just do it. Uh,
Right.
Me in particular, last year I almost lost my life because I
Mhm.
was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and here I was just going, going, going until I ended up in the ICU. And my team showed a supreme amount of empathy for sticking it out with me because I had no idea what to do at that point. I thought, hey, I'll just take some pills and I'll be fine. I had no idea that I'm going to be taking insulin for the rest of my life 4 times a day, and some days I can get out of the bed and other days I cannot. And so uh, that really showcased to me like, hey, look, if someone tells me they need a mental health day, if someone feels like they're off their game, I'm going to pull them to the side and say, hey, what's going on? How can I help you? Not browbeat them and say, hey, look, what's going on? This isn't done.
Yeah. And, as I said before, my wife has type 1. So, kudos to you. That is always a tough start when you're first diagnosed, because you're just like, wow, really testing that often? Really? All these things are kind of just coming at you fast and furious. And, to your point, having the conversation with your staff. This is another part that the industry has struggled with really hard. It's not, you can't just say, how are you doing? You got to say, how are you doing? And then you got to say, no, really, how are you doing? Like, it takes a little bit more for us to open up, but you have to find out about what their problems are. Are they dealing with an illness? Is their family okay? How's little Billy's life? No one talks about families, and
Yeah.
whether you need to have the barbecue or whether you need to get people together. But that's one thing I've noticed as an industry that we failed at as well, is that we're so busy that we use that as an excuse. That, we're good, we're doing fine, everybody's doing fine, everybody do your own thing, put your head down. But if you're not getting in talking to people as individuals, then where's the loyalty going to come from?
Yeah, and definitely because you want ultimately they are your employee, and no, your employee is not your family. So I'm not part of saying, "Well, we're a family." No, we're not.
Right.
But what we are is that we are human, and so as humans, we're going to deal with things. We're going to deal with tough things. We all are. As leaders, we're going to have bad days. We're going to have to deal with our own issues, especially if you're a business owner. A
Yeah.
lot of times employees have no idea the things that you're dealing with to make things go, to make sure that you're going to get paid, to make sure that
Mhm.
the lights are going to be on, to make sure you can make it to the next project. It's an extreme amount of stress that you deal with, but you still have that responsibility to make sure that they're okay as well and that they're able to do their job. And that's one of the benefits I say often when it comes to having women in the workplace, is that we're a great diffuser because
Yeah.
you and I, Jeremy, can have that conversation and you don't feel weak and you don't feel judged. Versus if you have that conversation with another guy, he's like, yeah, yeah, just you'll be all right. It'll be okay. Let's have a beer and let's keep it going.
Yeah, exactly. Toughen up, bro. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you don't want to show that signs of vulnerability, and so that's a lot of the times what people struggle with, especially at work. For women, they don't want to feel weak. They want to say, hey, this is what's wrong, this is what's bothering me, but they don't want to be judged. And a lot of men face the same thing too. um,
Yeah.
my VP is a male, and we can have two different conversations with the same person. And I could say, "Don't you know his wife?" Blah blah blah. He's like, "What are you talking about? When that happened?" Like, I don't know anything about
Exactly.
it. He never said anything like that to me. He said she was fine. I don't know. Like if she had the baby, well,
Yeah.
It's
Well, and generalizing, I mean, women are better at getting there than men are. Like that's just a natural instinct of being able to maybe even empathize, hone in on something. Whereas guys, it's just we're not typically very good at it. I'm included in that group. I have to try. I actually have to make an effort. So I mean that's a real struggle for men in general. And of course, it's a stereotype, but at the same time, it is something that I personally have to work on. It's not something that comes natural.
Yeah. And I think that just that a lot of times we are wired differently. And I think what's really helped me is being a woman in this industry is leading as a woman, not trying to be a man, not trying to be too macho masculine. If you are that type of woman, that's fine. But I know that's not me. I'm gonna ask what's going on, how's your family, how's your wife, how are the kids? Because not because I'm doing it, but because I actually care, because I know if it's something that you care about, then you're going to be impacted by it, good or bad, and it's going to come with you to work. And so at
Yeah.
work, I want you to be able to do your best.
Yeah, and there's been a couple comments I'd like you to touch on this. Because you're a double minority, just the women aspect. You know, I've had this conversation with a couple people on my podcast where how many times have I been asked, maybe even how many kids I have, or the motherly questions that I'm sure you got. I've never got a question about me being a father.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you need time off? Like, are you going to be able to come back? Is having the baby going to impact your role? Like, are you going to be
yes,
able to do this?
yes,
And,
all of that. Like, and yeah, I mean, again, that because a lot of this is new. It's like having those conversations and even a policy in place. It wasn't in place for a lot of employers, right? They were learning on the fly that, oh crap, we have to figure out maternity leave, and all this stuff is like new. So, talk to me a little bit about that, because I bet that would make me angry if I was you and people were asking me about me being a mother before they asked about me in business.
oh,
And you know what I mean?
it's very common.
Yeah.
And the more that you kind of rise to the top and that you become in a leadership position, the more taxing that it is. And it is no secret that when it comes to the decision making, that leaders and men make that decision based on if she's going to have children, or if she's married, or if she's going to be capable of doing that role. And that's never asked of a man. I've never heard of a man being asked, is he going to be able to have this baby and be able to do the work? The thing
Right.
about it, when it comes to women in male dominated industries as a whole, we are not naive. We're actually kind of crazy because we know what we're getting into.
Yeah.
We know the challenges, we know how we're going to be perceived. And so, often the women who are in leadership positions, they know what's required of them. We know that we have to be twice as good and work twice as hard to get the same recognition, hopefully.
Right.
And so it's almost naive of men to think that you wouldn't be able to take it on, because I've thought about it way before you even thought to
Right.
ask me the question. I've considered if this is something that I could tackle.
Right.
Will I have a babysitter? Is my husband able to get the baby? Can we alternate and travel and what that looks like? And so
Yeah.
I think you just have to, that's the importance of having more diversity in those key positions so that someone could say, hey, Jeremy, have you thought about the fact that, X, Y, and Z and how that will impact the women within the company? You
Right.
have to have that. So, because, like, again, if you don't know, you don't know. So, how can you make plans for something that is just, not even on your radar?
Right. Right. And last question for you, and this would be a good one for Dr. G. Now, she got into the consulting space for DEI. What does that look like if we have somebody that listening and tuning in right now? What does that look like for them? Now, obviously, they go to her. They would hire her. What's a typical process for a consultant in that space?
Yeah, well, a lot of what she's doing now is helping companies to ensure that they're meeting their DEI goals, and that kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, as far as what can companies do. They would hire her to ensure that they are meeting their goals, but also to strategize a plan of how they can attract and attain more diversity within their company for with employees, but also from a standpoint of hiring subcontractors and vendors for a lot of the projects. A lot of the projects now have requirements, and some people want to not just do it when there's a requirement, but to have a constant role, which they should have a slew of small and diverse contractors on hand. So when the projects come up, they have a good pool of talented people that they can lean to. And so that's really the role that she plays from the outside. If it's a DEI person within the company, they're pretty much responsible for making sure that the goals that the company is meeting the goals that are set by the owner,
Right.
and also creating programs that are going to both attract and retain small and diverse contractors.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we appreciate you you filling some time there, Jennifer. We like I said, the live TV is kind of fun, but I really appreciate you spending some extra time with us, and we will definitely follow you on LinkedIn. You have some other speaking engagements coming up, live programs coming up?
I do. The most immediately one is I'm going to be having a master class. It's Him, Not You, leading in a male dominated industry. And that's going to be on June 16th at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Okay.
And so today I'll be releasing the registration. So you can register through Eventbrite. If you want to check out any previous post or anything like that, you can go to my LinkedIn, but you can also go to my Instagram, which is Construction Law Gal, GAL,
Okay.
and check it out for things that are coming up. I have some other things coming up as well too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll definitely stay in touch with you, and we'll try to tackle this thing together. But I appreciate for all that you're doing for the industry, for your business, and being a leader by example. And I guess that's the best kind of leader. So thank you so much for being here,
Yeah,
Jennifer.
absolutely. Thank you for having me. And the last thing I'll say is, if you're scared, we're all scared. Do it anyway. Trial and error. Just do it
Yeah.
and move from there. Thanks a lot, Jeremy.
Yes. Thank you. All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us on Construction Executives Live. We do have our next show August 3rd. We are taking July off because of a lot of vacations. So August 3rd, 10 a.m. Pacific. The title is Growth Mindset and Sales Transformation with Chaz Wolf and Ryan Groff, both really dynamic speakers. We will throw the event link in the chat as well. Try to register early so you get it on that calendar. I know how we all are in construction, very busy, but again, thank you for being here. I know we had some technical difficulties there, and for hanging in there with us for the comments. I appreciate you guys saying on the comments to hang in there, Jeremy. Whew. That was tough, but we made it through, and thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.